And to further exemplify how we're winning, it is my honor to introduce someone who is one of the most effective animal advocates this movement has ever seen. Founder and director of the powerhouse organization Mercy for Animals, which, by the way, he founded when he was 15 years old, and I believe is also the youngest member of the Animal Rights Hall of Fame. Nathan Runkle has worked to pass landmark farmed animal protection legislation, raise public awareness about veganism, and implement animal policy changes. Having appeared in hundreds of interviews, including 2020, Nightline, ABC World News Tonight, CNN, NPR, and the New York Times, we are so fortunate to have this man serving as an ambassador for veganism. So tonight, I welcome Nathan Runkle to the closing plenary. Here he is. Sure.
Oh, hello. How is everyone? Yeah, survived the conference? Feeling energized? Your batteries have been recharged? Okay. So we are winning. That's exciting, right? We're gonna get the energy up here. Come on, clap, clap. They're free, clapping's free. There we go. Now I hear it. All right. I want everyone to give a high five to the person on your right and your left because we're winning. Go ahead. That's right. Yes. And tell the person to your right and left, thank you, because we're winning because of all the people in this room. Yeah, thank you. Thank all of you. It's like one big happy family. This is fun, isn't it? All right. So today I want to talk about things that matter and using our voice to make an impact. All of the wonderful progress, the historic progress, the incredible things that are happening for animals aren't happening just because time is passing. It's happening because of dedicated, thoughtful, committed people like each and every one of you in this room today. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." Dr. Jane Goodall was somebody who focused on things that mattered, and she also found her voice. As all of us know, Dr. Goodall spent over 30 years observing, living with, studying primates in Africa. And Dr. Goodall said, we have to understand that we are not the only beings on this planet with personalities and minds. Now, Dr. Goodall, she started her work at a time when even the veterinary community was not unified in a view that all animals have feelings, let alone thoughts. And what Dr. Goodall started to uncover in her observations were that many of the traits and characteristics that for far too long people thought were unique to humans are in fact very widespread in the animal community. She found that things such as language, culture, empathy, passing information along generationally happened in primates. And what we have learned is that it's not isolated to primates. In fact, animals such as chickens share many of these same traits. I think this photograph really illustrates that the cold steel of a stethoscope on the skin of a human and non-human primate evokes the same chilled reaction. Regardless of species, most of us like a nice hot bath. So we know through observation, and many of us who share our homes and our lives with other animals, that they share our same spark for life, our desire for freedom, our wanting to belong, the sense of companionship and friendship and loyalty. This is a photograph that went viral on the internet recently. These are two dogs who were best friends. They lived in China, and they never had a human guardian. They never had a home. They were never given names by people. They were considered street dogs. But to them, they had the best friendship that you could imagine. Unfortunately, one day, the female was hit by a car. Her male companion stayed by her side for 6 hours, licking her face, nudging her, and witnesses say, crying. If this isn't empathy, if this isn't friendship, if this isn't loyalty, I don't know what is. And this is not an isolated case. There's a story of a German shepherd whose human guardian died, and for 6 years, every day he would go and watch guard over his guardian's grave, going home only to eat and coming back. It's hard to find that level of friendship or loyalty among our own human friends. And of course, it's not just dogs and cats. This is a headline from a newspaper in Massachusetts titled, "Strange Noises Turn Out to Be Cows Missing Their Calves." And the story was about citizens in a small farming community in Massachusetts who heard screams coming from a nearby farm, and they thought that there were humans that were being tortured, that may have been kidnapped. So the local police started to receive calls, and they went to the farm to investigate, and what they found was that there were no humans that were being exploited. In fact, it was mother cows whose babies had been dragged away from them and sent to a veal farm. They were mourning, they were protesting, they were grieving over the loss of their loved ones. And finally, the scientific community, which oftentimes is slow to catch on, is starting to officially acknowledge this as well. In fact, recently, thousands of the top leading scientists signed what was called the Cambridge Declaration of Consciousness. And what they said is that all animals, whether mammals or birds, and including octopus, are just as sentient and aware as humans are. So what does this mean? What does this greater understanding of our fellow earthlings mean? I think it means that we have a greater obligation to protect them. We can no longer plead ignorance because we know who they are. We're all here because we want to change the course of history. We're all here because we know that there is an injustice happening every single second in our country and around the world for farmed animals. We're here because of her. Mother pigs who spend their miserable lives locked in tiny cages where they can't even turn around. And we're here because of him, the baby calves, who only know their mothers for a few moments. The rest of their lives, all they know is 2 feet of dirty steel, concrete, and wood. And we're here because of her, the egg-laying hens who live their lives crammed in cages where they can't even turn around. William Douglas, the longest-serving Supreme Court justice, he said, "Sunlight is the best disinfectant." And William Douglas was an adamant defender of the First Amendment. And I think that this is true today. Sunlight really is the best disinfectant. And each and every one of us in this room can be the sunlight that animals need on factory farms. Cruelty cannot stay on the spotlight. The way in which these animals are abused and exploited is out of step and out of line with the values of most Americans. It's up to us to shine this spotlight, to be the disinfectant that these animals so desperately, desperately need. I want to share with you a few stories of individuals who I think really embody the spirit of transformation. The first is Virgil Butler, who spoke at this conference years ago, and I had the honor of meeting him. Virgil worked as a slaughterhouse employee for Tyson Foods in Arkansas. He worked there for about 10 years, and his job was to take chickens as they arrived and slam them into shackles where they went to have their throats slit. Now, Virgil witnessed some of the worst abuse that you could imagine. Birds having their heads ripped off, workers punching them, putting ice bombs in them and seeing them blow up. And Virgil became very disturbed by this. In fact, he started to have nightmares. He started to suffer from a form of PTSD. In fact, it grew so bad that Virgil quit his job. He had no financial resources. As you can see in this photograph of him, he lived in a small trailer with his wife. But he knew in good conscience he could not support this any longer. So Virgil started to blog about his experiences and what he saw as a form of self-therapy, but as a form of activism as well. Virgil became a vegan animal rights activist. And if someone like Virgil can give up the very little that they had because of a change in consciousness, anyone can do that. This fine young man, Alex Hershaft, who hopefully everyone has had the honor of meeting, the founder and president of Farm Animal Rights Movement, is a survivor of the Holocaust. He lost his family to the Nazis, and as we all know, Alex took an experience that could have destroyed him and thrown him into a life of anger and despair, and he turned it into hope. He found the sunlight, and he decided that he was going to fight oppression in every form that he could. And he has been one of the movement's strongest, most outspoken advocates against what he considers the Holocaust happening to animals today on factory farms. And the stories that he tells about seeing piles of shoes and other items taken from Jews by the Nazis to piles of animal skins and hairs in slaughterhouses is something that is profound and touching. This is Brian and Kelly Sweetie. They started Sweet Earth Natural Foods. They produce seitan and veggie burritos and quinoa burgers, some really nice stuff. They've calculated that they save about 1,000 chickens a day just from their products. It's great. So why is he in my presentation about stories of transformation? Well, Brian used to be the chairman of Burger King. Brian now says that he used to be on, quote, the dark side of food, which we agree with him on. But again, if someone can go from the chairman of Burger King to having a vegan food company that saves over 1,000 animals a day and become an outspoken advocate on this issue, again, the potential for transformation is unlimited. Speaking of folks having an impact in the business arena, we heard from the incredible Josh Bulk last night, who co-founded Hampton Creek with the other Josh Tetrick, and they are the fastest growing food company on earth. Take that in. And as many of you know, they are outperforming outdated animal products, starting with eggs, and things like mayonnaise and pancakes and cookie dough, showing how inefficient it is, how inhumane it is. And they've been incredibly successful, catching the attention of the most influential, powerful, wealthy people on the planet. Here's Josh feeding an eggless muffin to Bill Gates. Now, Bill Gates was so impressed by this that he became an investor in Hampton Creek. And in Bill's evolution now says the future of meat is vegan. Speaking of billionaire tech geniuses, Elon Musk and others, including the co-founder of Google here, are investing in cellular agriculture. Meat, yes, some people know what I'm talking about. Taking a single cell from an animal and creating burgers and other products that are completely slaughter-free, that take over 90% less resources, land, water, grains to produce. Now, this burger costs $300,000, so it's a bit overpriced right now, but they're scaling it. We find ourselves at a fork in the road, and the decisions that we make, those of us in this room and our generation make, will have profound impact on all of the generations that are ahead of us. And this issue and the issues surrounding it are urgent. We can choose a path of sustainability. We can choose to use our ingenuity, our innovative skills. We can use the fullest potential of humanity to come up with solutions to the problems that all of us in this room are so familiar with. Or we can choose a path that continues to exploit animals, pollute our environment, and degrade our natural resources. The choice is ours. But time is running out, and future generations will judge us based on the decisions that we make and the actions that we take. The Washington Post did a study, a poll, where they asked, what will future generations condemn us for? And they found that second only to our exploitation of the environment is our treatment of animals in food production. We are seeing an incredible generational shift. Each generation is moving the needle forward on animal rights, just as it has on any other social justice issue. A recent poll done by Hartman Group found that the number of faithful vegetarians has increased exponentially by generation to generation. Baby boomers come in at about 2%, Generation Xers at about 4%, but millennials, a whopping 12%, now identify as faithful vegetarians and vegans. The writing is on the wall. It is clear the direction that we are moving. And as you have heard throughout this conference, it's having a real impact on the number of animals who are subjected to the horrors that we all know. In fact, in 2007, meat consumption dropped off of a cliff. We're now slaughtering 400 million fewer animals every year in this country. That is a testament. Bloomberg Businessweek had a story titled, "At Taco Bell, it's not meat, it's protein." And they found that 43% of conversations happening today about meat over the last 6 months were negative, including words such as bad and concern and problem. Literally, meat has become a 4-letter word. Dun-dun-dun. Okay. And as you heard, this slide is old because twice as many McDonald's have closed down now. Ronald's not happy about it, but we are. So crowding out the McDonald's, we now have entirely plant-based vegan restaurants that are catching on like wildfire. Places like Veggie Grill. Yes? And Native Foods are opening dozens of restaurants with hundreds more in the works. We have city councils across the country that are starting to pass Meatless Monday resolutions. We see unified school districts, such as LA, which serves over 650,000 meatless meals, getting rid of meat every Monday. We have entire schools, like PS 244 in Flushing, Queens, that has gone all vegetarian. Now, this happened a few years ago, And we now know that it has been an incredible success. This all-vegetarian school is thriving. At this school, 80% of the students are participating, and teachers say that they see an increase in performance. They see more attentiveness and alertness from the students, not to mention the wonderful impact on animals. We even see entire dining halls going vegan. This is a photograph of a vegan dining hall in Denton, Texas. Amtrak has taken notice, jumping on the vegan train. Their magazine called Arrive is talking about how veganism and plant-based eating has arrived across the country. And whether they're profiling Bill or Beyonce or Oprah or Ozzy, they now show that plant-based eating is gaining momentum every single day. They state celebrities are not so much sparking a cultural trend, but instead are reflecting a larger cultural shift over time. And from the railway to the subway, yes, the restaurant Subway, which we heard about earlier, the largest restaurant chain in the country, more locations than McDonald's, have added vegan options to over 1,000 stores. This is an advertisement from Subway saying, "Get your vegan on." That's pretty cool. And as we also heard about ice cream giant Ben & Jerry's adding a vegan flavor, in large part due to the work of Farm and so many of you in this room for contacting them, showing the real demand for these products. NASDAQ did a recent story titled "How the Death of Meat Could Impact Your Portfolio." And it says, from Liam Brothers to WorldCom to the Soviet Union, many seemingly robust institutions can disappear in a flash. Other institutions can gradually fade away, which appears to be happening with meat, which has also been an institution itself. And I couldn't agree more. We have this quote from Richard Dawkins, the Oxford professor of ethology. He said, "In 100 or 200 years' time, we may look back on the way we treated animals today as something like the way we today look back on the way our forefathers treated slaves." So from the business community to the ethics community, we see some of the biggest thought leaders acknowledging that the future is one of plant-based foods, not one based on meat. That the societal evolution is one of compassion, one of supporting the environment. And it reminds me of this quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And it's true. The arc of the moral universe is long, and it does bend towards justice, but it doesn't bend on its own. It doesn't bend simply because time has passed. The arc of the moral universe bends because people, concerned citizens, grab it and they bend it over time. Just 160 years ago, 2 generations ago, it was legal in our country to own another human being because of the color of their skin. It was legal 160 years ago, before the passage of the 13th Amendment, to brand another person, to rape them, to force them into labor, to separate them from their families, to deny them of the most simple pleasures and joy. 160 years ago, a mere blink of an eye. This is me and my grandfather, Clarence Thomas Summer. He passed away recently at the age of 93 years old. Now, Clarence was born in 1919, and at the time, Clarence's mother was unable to vote. It was illegal in our country for my grandfather's mother to vote. She was viewed as too irrational to vote. Now, as we all know, that has changed. It didn't change because of time itself. It changed because of the suffrage movement. It changed because women spoke up and demanded that change happened. It was only in 1920 that the 19th Amendment was ratified. 50 years ago, we had segregation in this country. People were relegated to different bathrooms because of the color of their skin. 50 short years ago. But because of the leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and others who protested, boycotted, did sit-ins, spoke up, spoke out, things started to change. And today, a mere 160 years after slavery, we have our first African-American president in the United States. Now, as we have all seen with the Confederate flag issues, we are not out of the clear for racism in this country or sexism in this country. But we are making progress, and we're making progress because people are grabbing the moral arc of the universe and bending it. This is me as a little boy, nip, slip, and all here. When I grew up on a small farm in Ohio 31 years ago, it was illegal in all 50 states for gays and lesbians to get married. I was called a faggot before I even knew what it meant. I faced oppression because of who I was. I was told by society that my love wasn't equal to others' love, that my relationships weren't as valuable as others' relationships. But a lot has changed. When I was here last year, I spoke with such joy and pride about how 19 states in our country had finally legalized marriage equality. Today, as we know, all 50 states have recognized that we are all equal of love. Peter Singer, author of Animal Liberation, said, "It's easy for us to criticize the prejudice of our grandfathers, from which our fathers freed themselves. It is more difficult to distance ourselves from our own views so we can dispassionately search for prejudice among our own beliefs and values. It's easy for us to read the history books and say, of course racism was wrong, of course sexism was wrong, of course slavery was wrong. It's much more difficult for us to look at what's happening today. What are the injustices? And it's more difficult to stand up and take positions which sometimes are unpopular to push the ball forward. We know that all animals want to live. They want to be free. I want to share with you a story of a buffalo that I met in India. In India, it's the largest dairy-producing country in the entire world. And 2/3 of the animals used there are buffalo. And they live in horrible conditions. I went to about a dozen dairy factory farms while in India and was absolutely heartbroken by what I saw. The mothers are kept chained by their necks. Most of the chains are only 2 feet long. The photo on the left here is of a mother buffalo on one of those dairy farms that I visited. You can see the chain is so tight around her neck that it is digging into her skin. She can't even lift her head upright. It is so tight. I took these photographs, and I will never forget her because she had this spark for freedom that she wanted. Who knows how long she had been chained there, but she didn't give up. She was still trying to break these chains. And as I stood there with her, I noticed that there was a calf behind her, which is the image here on the right. And she was trying so desperately to protect him. And I had to leave them behind. There was nothing that I could do in that moment to save either of them. But I renewed my promise to her and to him to do everything that I could to break these chains of oppression. This is a series of photographs from a pig in China who also fought so desperately for his freedom. He jumped 12 feet out of the top of a transport truck to his freedom. And these images, this will to live and to fight, went viral across the internet, as so many stories do of animals who escape and who survive. And I'll leave you with this story. It goes something like this. There's a grandfather and his son, and they're walking along the beach. And there are hundreds of starfish on the beach, and they're starting to die. They're starting to dry out. And the little boy, he picks up the starfish, and he's throwing them back into the water. And his grandfather says, "What are you doing? There are hundreds and hundreds of starfish here. There is no way that you can save all of these starfish." And the little boy, wise beyond his years, smiled at his grandpa, picked up another starfish, and threw him back into the water. And he said, "It matters to this one." And he picked up another starfish and threw him back and said, "And it matters to this one." And in so many ways, that is the story that we're faced with. We know the numbers are astronomical, billions of animals. We can't wrap our head around that statistic. But compassion is a renewable resource. It is flexing a muscle that grows stronger as we use it. And we know that for those who benefit from our compassion, it can mean the difference between life and death, freedom or imprisonment. We are in a position where we hold so much power, just as people, and people who have the means to have a voice and the freedom to have a voice. We must not squander this opportunity that we have. We must do everything that we can. And I will leave you with this quote from Harriet Beecher Stowe. She said, "It's a matter of taking the side of the weak against the strong, something the best people have always done. And it is hard to imagine a group of individuals who are weaker and more vulnerable and more oppressed than animals. And all of us have so much strength and so much power. And in this situation of us holding that and them being at our mercy, we must seize the opportunity. We must speak up. We must speak out. We must do everything we can to bring about the day of animal liberation as quickly as possible." Thank you so much.